this is that whole shared understanding problem, the Tower of Babel, where we're talking about different things. And I already mentioned this before, but I'll just touch on it again. I was saying A/B testing. I meant quantitative. Cody, was thinking I meant take one person in each one of the, usability tests. But we've seen it in everything. Like at Netflix, what I did to kind of work on a shared understanding between design and engineering, one of the guys who joined my team, Brian Cox, was really good about just sort of doing things that pull teams together. Like when he's at Yahoo, he had this thing called Coffee Dog. And it came about, he was in the Yahoo Mail team, and his alarm, when he'd set it for 3 o'clock, because he liked to go get coffee at 3 o'clock, it was a barking dog, on his phone. So it became known as Coffee Dog, and at Coffee Dog time, almost the whole Yahoo Mail team would go down to get coffee, and I usually join him because Brian's phone had gone off and barking like a dog. So when he came to Netflix, when I hired him there, he brought Coffee Dog there, and so we had Coffee Dog there, and it was a social event, and it kind of pulled the team together, right? And the team, as it just talked together in a social environment like that, sort of began to develop common, thinking and language. And then we, to include the design team, he said, hey, why don't we have a round table? So we had this round table in the design area that they'd gotten, this big round table. And so we just every Friday afternoon around 2, we just go, whoever could make it from the design engineering team, we go sit at the table. We were pretty small, so we could, most of it, we could pretty much fit around the table. And we just talk about whatever. It wasn't directed by me or any of the management. It was like engineers and designers could come, whatever their particular problem was or concern or whatever. Just totally open, free format, no threatening environment. They like to call the Larry where the box shot was, and he had the stars and stuff like that, they called it the lockup. And for a little while, I was like, what the hell is a lockup, It comes from advertising, doing like a lockup, And so just even understanding some language like that, or getting to understand, what we could do with CSS, couldn't do with CSS, what we could do with, what was challenging, hard to do. We worked through things like rounded corners and blah, blah, blah. This sort of, we just had those discussions, and it was often surprised to find out, they didn't want to do whatever this was that we thought they wanted to do anyway, so we're fine and cool. Which would have been harder if you'd had an individual conversation. But getting the teams together, we kind of broke down that whole, Tower of Babel concept and just had conversations, shared understanding. So, this is interesting because the GitHub thing I mentioned earlier, they talk about they really are dependent upon, electronic communication. And here I'm sort of saying that's a problem, and I still believe it is a problem because I don't know about you, but mail is really hard to keep up with. And it's not the best form for having discussions, especially if you get a couple of rounds. So you need to get some higher bandwidth communication. The other thing is interesting. We saw this with teams. We'd have another team get started up, and they were saying, "Okay, we're going lean and all that." And then we'd check calendars, and they had all these meetings. Why are you having meetings if you got a war room, you're sitting together? Why do you have to have a formal meeting and go to some other room and have a meeting? I mean, I get sometimes you have a meeting, And that was the thing with our team down in our room. People would say, we want to set up a meeting with you. Just come to the room, I started doing something interesting where when the weather was better, and we have this wonderful 6 or 7 months in California where it's just beautiful. I just sit out in the patio. I gave up my desk for a while to one of my employees because it put him closer to his team. I said, just sit at my desk, I don't care. And I just sat out in the patio area when I wasn't in a meeting. And so I would just call it holding court, because I just sit there and people would come by, hey, Bill, I can talk to you real quick. So we talked for 5 minutes and they're gone. And went, wow, that was a 30-minute one-on-one I would have had to have. And here's another one, 10 minutes, 15, 5, whatever. It was very ad hoc. And I love that, because I got to catch up so many people. When I go to these off-sites where they're like a leaders day, it's great because there's all these different execs, all these different other people that you never you have a hard time scheduling a conversation with. You just have a quick 5-minute conversation. I was sitting there one day and David, our president, walks by and says, oh, I like your office. I said, yeah, it's holding court. He says, okay, cool, I'll hold court with you. So he sat down for 10 minutes. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff. I could get time on his calendar if I really wanted it, but I don't because he's busy enough. But he had that 10 minutes to stop and just chat, right? So these kind of things happen when you just sort of have an informal space. And if you read some of Christopher Alexander's work on design patterns, for spaces, for architecture, which is where all that came from, he talks about his whole thing of design patterns was how do we design spaces and offices and everything else so that it fosters community and collaboration. He even has this thing he talks about, the nuisance distance. So he actually has graphs and charts and stuff where, as soon as you have to go down one floor, you've exceeded the nuisance distance. It's just too hard to go talk to you, right? So one of the things we're actually doing right now is it's gonna cost us a lot of money, tens of millions of dollars, but we're redoing all the furniture on our main campus to be open and more flat, more like you'd see at Facebook or other places, and get rid of these big high wall cubes and put cross-functional teams together instead of like, here's the design team, here's this team, here's that team, and have it so trying to have as much as we can on wheels and stuff like that. Have you read which is it Steam?
Valve, yeah.
Valve, yeah. Have you read Valve's manual?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's the most amazing thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love the one thing, why does my desk have wheels? And they're like, yeah, so you can move anywhere you want, work with any team. You actually go volunteer to work with a team, and they have self-organizing teams. If you haven't had a chance, go Google for Valve's employee handbook. It is absolutely fantastic. I read it to my kids because they love video games too, but they loved it because it's got a humor in it. It's kind of funny, and it's just a cool insight.
Supposedly it was leaked.
What's that?
But supposedly it was leaked. It wasn't supposed to be out.
Oh, really? Interesting. Well, yeah. It's funny, the Netflix Culture Deck, people thought it was leaked, but actually, it wasn't leaked. I told Reed that we should do it on SlideShare instead of PDF. So it's one Sunday morning where I'm hiking up a mountain. He calls me, and I said, no, I don't want to put it on PDF. Let's put it on a SlideShare. He didn't know what SlideShare was. So he goes and creates this goofy account, like it looks like a bogus account, I don't know, it was some weird username he used. And he puts it out there, and then I mentioned in a blog post or tweeted or something, and it looked like it was something leaked. So that actually helped the viral nature of the Netflix Culture Deck when it first went out. 2 million views or something like on SlideShare, because people thought it was leaked. So maybe it is leaked, maybe it's not, but anyway. But the electronic, I found that it kind of gets in the way. It's like those magic whiteboards. Maybe if I was geeky enough, I'm pretty geeky, but I don't know. It seems like there's nothing really replaces that face-to-face. Have you read Alan Cooper's book, The Inmates Running the Asylum? It's basically, having engineers do design. Some of my favorite things, my wife, who's very non-techie, I read her some of this, and she's always reminded me is, he has this kind of running joke in there. What do you get when you cross a computer with a camera? You get a computer, because you have all the nuisances of a computer. What do you get when it cross, whatever with a computer? It's always a computer. Now the iPhone was the first thing to kind of change that, where you actually felt like this is actually something I can interact with, instead of just being a computer that was annoyance, And in that, he talks about a lot of these designs that happen is because, it's this not ability to talk to each other across domains. And you'd have, like at Nokia, you have the hardware guys designing the keyboard, the software guys designing this and isolation. One time I got a TV with a remote control that it was a combo TV and VCR, just way back, TV and VCR combo thing, right? And the controller had 2 sections on it. And I guarantee you the 2 teams that worked on those 2 sections that ended up with the controller had never even met each other, right? They totally, looked kind of different and everything, and it was like they behaved different. Some of the icons were different that did the same kind of function, and it was really bizarre. But that's the same kind of symptom. Same thing Nokia ran into for a while was they had different divisions doing different parts of the experience. And while we, in front engineering, a lot of times we have design in our background, so we don't fit to the perfect engineering classification. When you're doing coding, it does something to your brain, right? It sucks all other context out of your being, and you're no longer a rational human anymore because you're in the zone. And it's hard to get, because you got to hold so much in your head, it's hard to get back up and see the big picture, you know. So watch out for the Cityway.